Hi everyone! Mabuhay ug madayaw! I am Abigail Balili, and for today, we will be answering the question, why is it important to have needs assessment in developing instructional materials? If you're ready, then let's proceed. In today's discussion, we will be defining what is instructional material development, or IMD, know the purpose of needs assessment in making or developing instructional materials, and of course, to know the advantages and disadvantages of having needs assessment right before developing or creating our instructional materials that we will be using in the teaching and learning processes. Let's start first by answering what is instructional material development. Instructional material development refers to the process of designing, creating, and producing educational materials that will aid or facilitate the effective teaching and learning within a curriculum or a training program that's according to National Science Foundation of 2018. And so instructional material development is a very crucial aspect to provide quality education to our learners. Why? Because by creating and providing access to quality resources or high quality learning resources, it enhances the teaching and learning process and as well as improving the learning outcomes of our students. All the instructional materials that we will be creating or developing, we should always make sure that it will be aligned with the learning competencies as well as the curriculum standards set by the DepEd, and that's in the context here in the Philippines. And the materials that we will be using should be learner-centered. When I say learner-centered, we should take into account that it will accommodate the diverse needs and the different learning styles of our students. All of these instructional materials should undergo a quality assurance process to ensure that they are accurate, relevant, and effective. In the teaching and learning process, there are a lot of instructional materials that we can use. It can range from green boards, blackboards, or whiteboards, flip charts, journals, videos, and right now with the advent of technology, we can now use PowerPoint presentation, YouTube videos, Google, and even virtual reality to make our students more engaged with the classroom discussion. But how can we know what's the best instructional materials for our students? This is where needs assessment comes in. So what is needs assessment? Needs assessment is the tool that will help us to identify first the core problems to solve. With needs assessment, it will help us to clarify the actual issue or problem that our instructional design is intended to solve, rather than relying on our own assumptions or superficial observations. Next, the target audience. This is where we will be knowing who the design or who the instructional material is intended for. It goes beyond their demographics, understanding their specific needs, behaviors, preferences, and of course their limitations. And what is the current state or the context when, where, and how the design will be used. So we will consider the social context and the technological infrastructure that they have. Next is the desired outcome. So needs assessment helps us to set specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bounded, or commonly known as SMART, goals for the design or the instructional material design and development, ensuring it addresses the identified needs. And lastly, it will give us a recommendation, determine what content or features are essential, what can we improve, or what we can change to target or to provide the needs of our target audience. Although conducting needs assessment is one of the most crucial parts in developing instructional materials, it is often overlooked or even skipped in an effort to save time. Now, it's sad because most of our teachers tend to overlook it since needs assessment involves gathering data, analyzing sources, synthesizing the findings, finding recommendations and resolutions for the specific problem for us to create a better instructional material. And this process can be lengthy. That's why it is often skipped by most of our teachers because, of course, as teachers, we don't only teach in schools. There are also deadlines to meet. Thus, we tend to skip or overlook it to save time. And so to contextualize this, a needs assessment in developing or designing an instructional material within DepEd involves identifying gaps in students' learning by collecting data from teachers, students, and parents, and right after collecting it, analyzing their current knowledge and skills against the desired outcomes, and of course, use all the collected and analyzed information to design targeted instructional materials that will meet and address the needs of our students. So needs assessment is very important for us to make an instructional material that is effective, accurate, and relevant to the current situation of our students. Stefaniak of 2021 provides us with an overview with the different steps in conducting needs assessment. And it first starts with identifying the problem and the learning objectives. In this phase, we will be able to know the challenges and the issues that our teachers and students are facing. So we will be asking them about their experiences, the challenges, their needs, and we will also take a look and consider the learning environment, the available resources, for us to be able to create an instructional material that is relevant and effective at the same time. And we should also make sure that it is still aligned with the learning objectives. So the objectives will provide us a clear direction for the design and development of instructional material. They will serve as our roadmap in guiding our decisions about the content, activities, and assessments that we will be giving to our students. After that, the next step is identifying our data sources. Now here in this phase, we will be identifying our potential data sources relevant to our instructional material development. It categorizes them from students, learners, teachers, instructors, materials, context, and etc. After identifying our data sources, this is the perfect time to collect our data. So here, we will choose the appropriate method for us to be able to gather the information that we need. It can range from interviews, observations, and etc. So in interviews, we allow in-depth exploration of individuals' perspectives. We can also conduct surveys where we can use it to gather a large number of data, focus groups, observations where we can provide direct insights about the learner's behavior, the classroom dynamics. We can also have a document review where we can examine existing materials such as the curriculum documents, lesson plans, and student works. So after collecting the necessary data, we will be moving forward with the next step, which is the data analysis. In data analysis, it involves where we try to make sense out of the collected information. So here, when the data is prepared, then the appropriate analysis techniques are chosen based on the data type, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. And then after that one, when we analyze these informations, we are looking for patterns and trends, and the results are interpreted in the context of the initial problem and the objectives. And here, in the analysis process and the findings of this analysis are documented in a report providing key insights to guide us in developing the effective instructional material. And right after analyzing our data and having the key findings, we are down to the last step, which is the gap analysis and recommendation. So gap analysis allows us to compare the current state of learners' knowledge and skills with the desired outcome of our lesson. And this gap highlights what needs to be learned by our students. And based on this gap, we can make recommendations for our instructional design, content, activities, and assessments that our students need to make to ensure that our materials as well will effectively align to what our students' needs or the identified needs of our students. So to summarize everything as to why the needs assessment should be conducted and is crucial is first, it allows our educators to identify the specific learning gaps that are needed to be addressed and the areas where students need the most support. Of course, for us to ensure that the developed curriculum and teaching materials are directly tailored to the actual needs of the learner. Since we were able to identify the problems, the gaps, we can come up with the recommendations as to how we can align our instructional materials to the developed curriculum and the standards as well. And to maximize the effectiveness of the instruction and leading to a better outcome across different regions and demographics. And with that, let us always remember that Slade of 2017 once said that it is a waste of time creating something that isn't going to be effective. So save your time wisely and always make sure that you can create something that is appropriate to the needs of your students. This time, we will be moving forward with the advantages and disadvantages of conducting needs assessment in developing and designing our instructional materials. Let's start with the advantages. One of the advantages of conducting needs assessment and developing our instructional materials is we become more efficient in resource allocation. Now, in identifying specific needs, it will help us to allocate resources effectively. We can focus on areas where improvement is most needed and avoid wasting time and money on unnecessary materials. Second is we can increase the learner satisfaction because when learners feel that their needs are being addressed, they are more likely to be satisfied with the learning experience and will motivate them even more. One of its advantages as well is that we can have targeted and relevant materials. In this phase, by understanding the learner's needs, you can create materials that are directly relevant to their existing knowledge, skills, and learning styles. Thus, this increases the likelihood of effective learning and improved performance. And speaking of improved performance, by having needs assessment, we can improve the learning outcomes. So, tailored materials are more engaging and motivating for our learners. Thus, it will lead to a better understanding, better retention, and we can allow them an engagement to apply their knowledge as well. Now, let's move forward with what are those disadvantages of conducting needs assessment. First, as what I've said a while ago, this is time consuming. It is a lengthy process. Conducting a thorough needs assessment can be time consuming and resource intensive, especially for a large scale projects. That's why, as what they've said, it is often overlooked and skipped. Next naman, there is a difficulty in data collection because gathering accurate and reliable data can be challenging, especially when dealing with diverse learners and complex learning environments. Now, aside from its time-consuming and the data collection is quite difficult to get or to achieve, there is also a potential for bias. Because sometimes the data collected may be influenced by biases of the researchers, participants, or the data collection themselves. And also, there will sometimes be a resistance to change because identifying the areas of improvement can sometimes lead to resistance to change from stakeholders who may be resistant to altering existing practices because, there will be a lot of adjustments if there will be a big change change out of that result of the needs assessment. So sometimes some schools or administrators or teachers perhaps will resist this change and will just stick to what they used to do inside the classroom or in their institutions. And so to conclude our discussion for today, conducting needs assessment and developing instructional materials is a very crucial first step towards creating effective and impactful learning experience. A needs assessment, though potentially might have its challenges, such as it's time consuming, it has a limitation to resources, but it also has its benefits. It can create a relevant, engaging, and data-driven learning experiences that will outweigh the drawbacks, ultimately leading to improved learning outcomes and efficient resource allocation. So we should consider having needs assessment to carefully plan and develop our instructional materials, as this is just one of the keys for us to maximize the learning experience of our students. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening in today's discussion, and I hope to see you on my next video. Bye!